other personal property. So we've got this room here, which actually came from downstairs in his basement. We brought everything up, and then we have the front room, which has Hummels and some other collectibles. So those are the only two rooms that we've got access to, as well as the kitchen in there. We are bidding by number, so if you don't have a number, please get one. I'm Paul Resch. I'll be calling the auction today. Jamie will be doing our clerking. Rick is around here somewhere. He'll be doing some ringing, and he's also doing some videoing. And Bill here will be doing some ringing, as well as he's here to help. If you need some help to get some stuff out, you can go ahead and do that. And he's always very gracious for a tip if you give him that for your help, for his help. Today, we are, again, selling everything as is, where is. We had videos of all of the items on our website, and actually the owner, we asked the owner, the seller, to go through and describe pluses and the minuses of the objects here. So I wanted to let everyone know we do have some absentee bids, and Bill back here will be bidding on behalf of the absentee bidders. And primarily it has to do with the arcade games. Removal today, if you can. We will be here on Monday between 10 a.m. and high noon to remove. If you don't get the stuff out today or can't get it out today, when you're paying the cashier, please sign up and let her know that you'll be back on Monday, and please give her, write down your name and your bidder number and a phone number, the best number to reach you at, so if there's some technical difficulty between the parties, we can make sure that we communicate. Today we're accepting cash, credit card being MasterCard, Visa, and Discover. The basketball champ machine, selling it as is. And who's going to give me $500 on it? 500, 500, will you give me 5 on it? 500, will you give me 5? I got 1150, who will give me 1200? I've got 1150 now, $1,200. 1200, 1200, will you give me 12? 12, 12, 12, will you give me 1200 on it? 1200, 1200, will you give me 12? 12, 12, 12, anybody give me 1200? Thank you, and a half. Now 13, now and a half. 13 and a half, now 14, now and a half. Now 15, now and a half, and 16, now and a half. Now 1700. 17, 17, now and a half, 17 and a half, now 1800, and 18 and a half, now 19, now 2000, 21, or 2050, 2050, 21, now 2150, 2150, will you give me 2150 on it? 2150, 2150, anyone at 2150? Thank you, now 22, now 22 and a half, 22 and a half, 22 and a half, 2250, 22 and a half, 22 and a half, 22 and a half, 2200 is the bid amount, now and a half. 22 and a half, 22 and a half, will you give me 22 and a half? 22 and a half, 22 and a half, 22 and a half, 22 and a half? Now 23. 23 and a half, 23 and a half, will you give me 23 and a half? 23 and a quarter, 23 and a quarter, will you give me 23 and a quarter? Anybody at 23 and a quarter? 23 and a quarter, 23 and a quarter, anybody at 23 and a quarter? 23 and a quarter, 23 is the bid, down a quarter, 23 is the bid, down a quarter, 23 is the bid, down a quarter, 23 and a quarter, 23 and a quarter, will you give me 23 and a quarter? 23 and a quarter, 23 and a quarter, sold $2,300, the bidder number
18.
18, 23 to 18. All right, on the golf machine, it will give me $500 on it. 500, 500, will you give me 5? 5, will you give me $500? 500, will you give me 5, will you give me 5? 5, thank you, now 6, now 700, now $800. 888, will you give me 8, thank you, 9. Now 1,000, 1,000, 1,000, 1,000, 1,100, 1,100, now 12. 12, 12, now 1,300, 13, 13, will you give me 13? 12 and a half, I have 12 there, now 12 and a half, will you give me 12 and a half? 12 and a half, 12 and a half, will you give me 12 and a half? Anyone over here, 12 and a half? 12's the bid, now 12 and a half, 12 and a half, 12 and a half, will you give me 12 and a half? 12 and a half, 12 and a half, will you give me 12 and a half? 12 and a half, 12 and a half, 12 and a half. Got you at 12, now a half. 12 and a half. Sold $1,200 to bidder number 40. 1,200 to number 40. Okay, we've got Williams All-American quarterback on the quarterback machine. And will give me $500 on his. I got 800, now 9. 8 now, $900, 900, 900, will you give me $900? I've got you at 8 now, 9, 9, anyone give me 900? 900, 900, now 10. Now $1,100, $1,100, now 12, now 1,300. 13, 13, will you give me 1,300 on the QB? 14, now 1,500. 15 on the quarterback, 16, now 1,700. 17, now 18, 18, 18, 1,750. Will you give me 1,750? 17's the bid, now 1,750. 17, now 1,750, 1,750. Will you give me 1,750? Anyone at 1,750? 1,750, 1,750, 1,750. Sold $1,700. Congratulations to number 40. 1,700 to 40. Okay. We've got now and a half. Now 75, now 700, now and a quarter. And a half, now 75, now and a half. 1,600, now and a half. And a half, you give me 16 and a half, now 17 and a half. 17 and a half and $1,800, now and a half. Now 19, 19, now and a half. 19 and a half, anyone 19 and a half, 19 and a half, 19 and a half. 19 and a half, anyone at 19 and a half. 19 and a half, 19 and a quarter, anyone at 19 and a quarter. 19 and a quarter, 19 and a quarter, now and a half. 19 and a half, now 75. 1975, 75, 1975 on the clock. 1975. Sold 19 and a half to number 38, 19 and a half to 38. Thank you very much. Okay. We've got the slot machine, the nickel slot here, Mills, Bluebell. I know several people were playing around with it, and it does apparently work.
It takes your money.
It does take your money. It is one-arm bandit. Thank you very much. And on the one-arm, and right next to the cash register, what a pair. On the one-arm bandit, who will give me $100 on it? 100, 100, 100. Anyone give me $100? Will you give me $50? 50, 50, now 75. 50, now 75, now 100. Now and a quarter, now and a half. 175, now 2 and a quarter and a half. Now 75 and 3 and a quarter and a half. 375, now 400 and a quarter and a half. 75, now 5. 5, 5 and a quarter, 5 and a quarter. Will you give me 5 and a quarter, now and a half? And 75, 575 and $600 and a quarter. 6 and a quarter, now and a half. Now 75, 75, 75, 675. Will you give me 675? 75, now 7. 700, now and a quarter, now and a half. 7 and a half, now 75, now 800. 800, now and a quarter, 8 and a quarter, now 8 and a half, 8 and a half, 8 and a half. Anyone at 8 and a half? Have you 8 and a quarter? Now 8 and a half, 8 and a half. Anyone at 8 and a half on it? 8 and a half on the one-arm band, and 8 and a half, 8 and a half, 8 and a half. Anyone at 8 and a half? 8 and a half, 8 and a half. Sold 825 to number 24, 825 to number 24. Thank you. Will you give me $400? 400, 400. Will you give me 4? 375 is the bid, now 44. Anyone give me $400? 375, now 400, 400. Anyone give me 400? 400. Anyone give me 4? 444. Anybody give me 4? 44. Sold 375 to bidder number 24. 375 to number 24. In the back here, we've got a dime, one-arm bandit. Looks like it's wild cherry. It's in black. On the 10-cent, one-arm bandit. There's even some dimes in there, as I can observe. Don't know how many. A couple of bucks. Who'll give me $100 on this one? $100 on the black one back here. 100, I have 100 now, 1 and a half and 2. Now a half. 300, now 3 and a half and 4. 4, 4, will you give me 4 and a half, 4 and a half, now $500, now 5 and a half. 600, 600, now 6 and a half. 6 and a half, 6 and a half and 7. Now 750. 7 and a quarter, will you give me 7 and a quarter, 7 and a quarter and a half, now 75, now 800 and a quarter. And a half, now 75, now 900 and a quarter and a half and 75. Will you give me 1,000 and 1,000 and a quarter. Quarter, quarter, anyone give me 1,000 and a quarter, 1,000 and a quarter, 10 and a quarter, 10 and a quarter, anyone at 10 and a quarter, 10 and a quarter, 10 and a quarter, anybody at 10 and a quarter, 10 and a quarter. Sold $1,000 to number 24, 1,000 to 24, congratulations on it. 10 now 15, now 20. 20 now 25, 25 now $30 and 5. 35, 35, 35, will you give me $35? 35, 35, 35, 35, now 40. 40, 40, will you give me 45? 45 now $50 and 5. 55 now 60. 60, 60, anybody give me $60? 60, 60, anyone give me 60? 60, 60, 60. 60, 60. Sold $55 to number 19. 55 to number 19. And on it, who'll give me $500 on it? 500 on the World Series. 500, 500, who'll give me 500 on the World Series game? 500, 500, will you give me 500 in the back in that World Series game? 500, 500, will you give me 500? We got one game left, will you give me 5 on it? 5 on it, 2 and a half, now 3 and a half. 2.5, now 3.5, 3.5, 3.5, anyone at 3.5, 3.5 on it. 3.5, 3.5, now 4. 4, will you give me 4.5, 4.5, will you give me 4.5 on it. 4.5, 4.5, 4.5, will you give me 4.25. 4.25, 4.25, 4, now 4.25. Thank you. Now half. 4.5, 75, 4.75, now $500. 5, will you give me $500? 500, will you give me 500? 4.75 is the bid. Now 5, 4, now 5.25. 5.25, 5's the bid, now 5.25. 5's the bid, now 5.25. 5.25, will you give me 5.25 on it? 5.25, anyone at 5.25? 5.25, 5's the bid, now 1.25. 5's the bid, now 5.25. 5.25. Sold $500 to number 24. 5 to number 24, thank you. Okay, 5.75, now 4. Now 4.25, 4.25, now half. 4.5, 4.5, now 500. 500, 500, now 5.25. 5.25, 5.25, 5.25, that's on that scale. 5.25, 5.25, now and a half. 5.5, 5.5, will you give me 5.5? 5.25, now 5.5. 5.5 on the scale. I got 5.5, now 75, 5.75, 5.75, anyone at 5.75? 5.75, 5.75. Sold 5.5, bidder number 18. All right.